Good afternoon. It's 1:01. We'll call the meeting to order. Any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? You see none. Be recorded, please. Delegations and presentations. First up, Stantec Consulting. Greg Cook. MTO planning studies for the Cobourg to Colborne and Nagle Road interchange. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council, for providing an opportunity to provide an overview of these two studies. So are we... Oh, so you can see them on your screen there? Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, so I should first off mention that I'm also here with Mohammed Wasim from the ministry. He's the ministry project manager, and Prabin Sharma, who is the corridor planner. So the three of us are here today to talk about the Highway 401 planning study and the Nagle Road interchange study. We are meeting with other councils as well. We met last night with the town of Cobourg, and then we'll be meeting with the other municipalities next week. So we just want to, the real purpose today is just to provide a high-level overview of these studies in advance of our public meeting next week. So we are going to be presenting a range of alternatives to the public next Wednesday evening. So we just wanted to provide council with an overview and a heads up of what we will be presenting next week. So we want to talk a little bit about the study areas and the study process for both studies, and then talk specifically about the Highway 401 planning study, and then talk specifically about the Nagle Road interchange study, and then wrap up with an overview of the consultation and the schedule, and then we, if we have time, we can answer some questions about the studies. So the study areas, so the ministry has retained Stantec to undertake a planning, preliminary design, and environmental assessment study for Highway 401 between Cobourg and Colborne. So that's the first study area. And in parallel, we are undertaking a study for the Nagle Road interchange. We've been retained by the ministry and the town of Cobourg to undertake this study. So you'll see on the map, the study areas are outlined in the dotted line, and they are, right adjacent to one another. So it does make some sense to combine these studies and run them in parallel. The environmental assessment process that we are following, again, for both studies is the Class EA for provincial transportation facilities. So Nagle Road, even though it is a municipal initiative, will be a provincial transportation facility. So following that ministry process, both of the studies fall under what we call the Group B project. So this type of study, is predefined in the EA and basically gives us a roadmap to follow in the study. And then both studies will share the same public information center, so there'll be combined public meetings and combined municipal advisory committee meetings for both studies. However, at the end of the study, we will be documenting the studies separately in two separate transportation environmental study reports. We are undertaking several environmental investigations as part of these studies to establish the baseline existing conditions. Starting with archaeology, cultural heritage, terrestrial ecosystems, fish and fish habitat, noise assessments, erosion and sedimentation overview, air quality and greenhouse gas assessment, contamination overview, and groundwater overview studies. So these will both be occurring during the data collection phase, but also throughout the studies as well. So now we'll talk specifically about the 401 planning study. So the big picture the main purpose of this study is to complete the environmental assessment and identify a recommended plan that meets both the current and long-term transportation needs. So it's really a blueprint of what the highway, the corridor will look like in the future. And that will include rehabilitation and replacement of bridges and structural culverts, interchange modifications at Lyle Street and Percy Street, commuter parking lot expansions at both of those interchanges, and looking at the future footprint of Highway 401, what it's going to look like when it's 6 and 8 lanes, so that we can design the bridges and structures appropriately. So we do, in the EA study, we do develop problem and opportunity statements to help provide a framework and help support the need and justification for these studies. So the 401 study, the main problem is that the bridges are nearing the end of their service life. So the structures were all constructed in the late 1950s. They've been rehabilitated, but it's getting to the point where the ministry needs to look at replacements. And the other problem is that the existing 401 platform cannot accommodate traffic staging that is required to rehabilitate or replace the structures. So the opportunities are to identify appropriate rehab and replacement strategies to maintain the safe operation of Highway 401. And also, again, for structural planning purposes, the bridges are designed for a 75-year service life. So the ministry really needs to look at the 401 corridor and what that might look like in the future with 6 lanes and 8 lanes, so that the bridges can be designed to accommodate future needs. So we will be presenting a range of PIC1 alternatives at the meeting next week. We've just provided a list today to provide an overview of what we are presenting. So we're looking at alternatives at the Danforth Road Bridge, the Gully Road Bridge, the Lyle Street Interchange and the Lyle Street Bridge, Shelter Valley Road and Creek, Vernonville Road, Boyce Road, the Percy Street Interchange and its structure, and we will be presenting 401 footprint alternatives for 6 and 8 lanes, and we'll also be presenting some alternatives around drainage improvements. So again, those, we'll have some nice pictures at the PIC if you're interested in seeing those alternatives. The other study is the Nago Road Interchange study, which the study area is located within the township of Hamilton and the town of Cobourg. So again, the purpose of the Nago Road Interchange study is to identify a recommended plan for an interchange in the vicinity of Nago Road, and to carry that through the environmental assessment process and get environmental approvals to move forward with that at some point in the future. So that study does include a new interchange in the vicinity of Nago Road to provide access to the Cobourg East community. We're looking at rehab or replacement of the existing Nago Road Bridge to see how that fits into the timing of that. And we should just note again that the interchange is the town of Cobourg's initiative. It was identified in their transportation master plan and their official plan several years ago. So they've already done some of the upfront planning, and we're just taking it to the next stage. And the town of Cobourg is bearing the cost of the study. So we're working for the ministry, and the ministry has an agreement with the town to cover the cost of the study. So again, within the EA framework, we look at problem and opportunity. And again, this one is, we're a little bit further advanced. The need for the interchange was identified in the Cobourg East community secondary plan. So again, to accommodate all of that development traffic, the interchange is needed to provide access to the 401. It does support the transportation objectives that are identified in the Town of Coburg's official plan. So as part of this study, we are undertaking some traffic modeling to determine how much traffic would potentially use the interchange, and that will help us determine what type of interchange is appropriate at this location. So that traffic modeling is underway. At this point, we've completed some of it. What we do know is the Coburg East community. So if you're not familiar, this is a development on the south side of the 401, kind of west of Nagle Road. It's going to be a significant traffic generator. The predominant movements to and from that development are basically from the south and to the west, and then the reverse movement from the west and to the south. So we know that those two moves, the interchange ramps need to be designed to accommodate those two biggest moves. And we also know that Nagle Road will require four through lanes through the interchange. So from Danforth to the north ramp terminal of the interchange would need to be 4 lanes to get that traffic to and from the interchange, and then it would transition back down to 2 lanes just north of the interchange. So we have developed several alternatives. In the initial run, we developed 8 alternatives, and we've narrowed that down to 4 that we're carrying forward. We will show all 8 at the public meeting next week, but just in the interest of time, we're showing the 4 shortlisted alternatives here. So the first alternative we're showing here is actually alternative 2. So this is an interchange located right on Nagle Road. So Nagle Road, the alignment of Nagle Road will not change. It's simply replacing the bridge on Nagle Road, providing a large enough bridge to accommodate the ramps, and then adding the ramps onto Nagle Road to provide all movements between Nagle Road and the 401. So this is what we call a Park Flow A that has configuration which has loop ramps in the northeast and the southwest quadrants. And those loop ramps are used for traffic to exit Nagle Road and enter onto the highway. The next alternative is, again, this is alternative 4. Again, the Nagle Road alignment is on the existing alignment. This is what we call a Park Flow AB. It just has slightly different type of loop ramps. In this case, the interchange ramps are all located on the east side of Nagle Road, and the reason for that is there is some concern about the distance between Nagle Road and Division Street interchange. So by putting the ramps on the east side of Nagle Road, that provides more separation between the interchange ramps. So when you get traffic coming on and other traffic exiting at Division, you can get that what we call weaving between the interchanges. So the idea behind this was to provide more separation between the ramps. And then the next 2 alternatives include a realignment of Nagle Road. So again, to move this interchange a little bit further east of Division, and also to provide some separation between the interchange and Danforth Road to the south, is why we've developed the next 2 alternatives. So it does require a realignment of Nagle Road. It connects back to Nagle Road just at the top of the page there. And then at the south end, Nagle Road would connect into Danforth just west of Jarvis. The existing piece of Nagle Road on the north side would be connected to the new Nagle Road and have a cul-de-sac at the 401. So there would still be access to the old piece of Nagle Road, but there would not be a bridge over the 401 on that alignment. And again, this is what we call the Parklow A, so similar configuration to the first alternative. And again, it provides interchange ramps for all movements between Nagle Road and the Highway 401. And then the fourth alternative, which is alternative 7, is a Parklow BA. So again, this is two different types of interchange ramps. The top one is actually a bigger loop ramp that's used for traffic to exit from the highway, and then the smaller one on the south side is a loop ramp for Nagle Road traffic. In this case, all of the ramps are on the west side of the realigned Nagle Road, and the reason for that is this alternative, the alignment of Nagle is just abutting this conservation constraint area to the east. There's a creek further east, and you can see the wooded area, but the alignment is just running along the edge of that wooded area. So putting the ramps on the west side avoids or minimizes impacts into that environmental constraint area. So as I mentioned, there are 4 other alternatives that are, the 2 on the existing alignment and 2 others on the new alignment that we did look at, but we are not carrying them forward, but they will be on display next week. And then the consultation, so as part of the EA studies, there's ongoing consultation throughout the studies. So this is in various forms. There are public notices, there's a project website. There will be 2 public information centers. So the first one is next week, where we are presenting the alternatives. And then next year, in the spring, we'll have a second PIC where we will present the preferred plan for each of the studies. There is the consultation includes Indigenous consultation, council presentations, meetings with the Municipal Advisory Committee, which is staff from all of the municipalities that are affected by the study. There's other consultation with external agencies, so other ministries, emergency services, and those types of agencies. And then the final formal piece of consultation is the Transportation Environmental Study Report that will be available for public review at the end of the study. There's a long list of other stakeholders involved. I won't go through them all. We did have a Municipal Advisory Committee meeting back a couple of months ago, again with staff from all the municipalities. There were some questions and concerns raised at that first meeting. This is just kind of a summary of some of the things that we talked about. So temporary traffic impacts on local roads. So some of the local roads, or some of the bridges may need to be closed during construction and would require detours on local roads. The duration of the road closures was a concern, as well as coordination of road closures. There's multiple bridges, and there's concern about closing more than one of those at a given time. Active transportation infrastructure at the crossing roads. So we heard that there's an interest in possibly accommodating active transportation. So because there are new bridges, there are opportunities to provide different facilities across 401. Accommodating long combination vehicles at interchanges is something that we heard an interest for. Traffic impacts on Nagle Road and the adjacent county road network. So we heard that from county staff. And then the jurisdiction of Nagle Road, with an interchange on Nagle Road. So it changes the character of Nagle Road a little bit. And there was a comment from the county, would that make it a county road, or does it stay as a town or a township road? We've also received other comments from public and other external agencies. So we've heard comments or concerns about interruptions to school bus routes, stormwater management, noise and vibration, air quality, impacts to sensitive natural environmental features. So that's the Brook Creek to the east of Nagle Road. Contamination in surface groundwater, property impacts, erodible soils, and other ongoing developments. So throughout the study, we collect these comments and incorporate them or try to address them throughout the study. So just wrapping up with the schedule. So we're at Public Information Center number 1, September 18th. We will be having other meetings with the MAC, and we would also like to set up a meeting with your staff and Town of Cobourg staff to coordinate the Nagle Road study a little bit, some of the discussions. We will have another public meeting in May, and then the goal is to publish the transportation environmental study reports late next summer. So this is the final slide. Just really a notice of the Public Information Center. So it will be held next week, September 18th, at the Cobourg Lions Community Center. The public are invited to attend between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. And there is an external agency meeting from 3 to 4. So if you're interested, you're invited to attend that external agency before the full public meeting as well. So that wraps up my formal presentation. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. We don't have a huge amount of time. Does anyone have pressing questions from council? Yes, Scott?
Some of those options have a major impact on some unbelievable residential properties on Nagle Road.
Right.
What type of notification is going to be used to let the public know of these information sessions?
So typically, we identify all of the affected property owners and send them individual letters.
They've got them.
They have?
They have.
Thank you.
They received emails, I believe.
Yeah, and some of them are on, some of them
On
who
the
have
list.
provided their email address through the
Yep.
website have been notified through that.
Anyone else? I think the great concern, obviously, is the land that you're going to need that you don't currently own.
Right.
That's going to be your major issue,
Right.
for sure. So, anyone else who's interested, then next Wednesday, right, at the Lions Center. I mean, I
Wednesday.
think you're going to get a big crowd
Yeah,
for that.
I hope so.
Scott, thank you very much, Sen, for your
Okay.
presentation.
All right, thank you very much.
Good luck. So we'll move on to 3.2, our second presentation, Eric Grabelski with the flying of event flags. Welcome, Eric.
We have Ashley Bowman joining us as well.
For sure.
Yeah,
You need to get a chair.
please.
Do we have? Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate that.
Shouldn't keep you guys too long.
Thank you.
Right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Councilors. I am here today. I'm Eric Grabelski. I live in Gore's Landing with my family, with my wife and child. I'm here with Ashley Bowman, who lives in Cobourg, is part of the PFLAG organization, which is a pride organization within Northumberland. And we're here to request that the pride flag go up during Pride Month. We don't have a specific time or duration that the flag should go up, but since you guys are building those flagpoles, we thought it would be a great opportunity to show some diversity and inclusion and those values within our community. Why am I taking this valuable time out of my work day for this? Because I think it's really important. These are important values that my family holds, and we want to be here in this community for a long period of time, and I know a lot of my community members as well hold these values, and these values of diversity and inclusion within our community. Our I am now going to just hand it over to Ashley. She did write a letter to you guys. I hope you guys all have it. I think it's up, right? And so she'll speak to that or read it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate the last paragraph because I find that of the utmost importance. So the promotion of queer representation in rural communities is of the utmost importance, and it would be great to see this message of recognition and acceptance spread throughout the entire county, not just Cobourg. I would have if you have any reservations about flying a rainbow flag, you need to take a step back and ask yourself why. LGBTQ plus pride was not born of a need to celebrate being queer, but the right to exist without persecution. And LGBTQ community individuals still face a high prevalence of violence, even today, like now in Cobourg, in Canada, and throughout the world. So instead of wondering why there isn't a straight pride movement, just be thankful that you don't need one. Our organization, so the ones I belong to, which is PFLAG, and I'm also co-founder of the Cobourg Queer Collective, would like to see more communities within Northumberland celebrating diversity, so one day we can come together and celebrate Northumberland Pride. Thank you.
Now, I do understand there's different values within our community, and but these values include those values. The flag does represent diversity, inclusion. You might not agree with certain lifestyles, but it's about being able to have these people in the community and be a part of the community and be accepting of all people in the community. So we're also willing to try to help you guys organize if you do decide to put up the pride flag with Cobourg, we can have those conversations further. If you guys wanted to have a little ceremony, if you wanted to have a little bit of advertising, that's up to council to decide, but we're willing to work hand in hand with council to make that happen. And we're also willing to donate pride flag too, if you guys decide to go in this direction. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Council, anyone? Scott?
You're referencing Cobourg in several comments. What's the duration of time that they might fly the flag?
They fly it for the whole month.
Yeah.
Whole month.
And we understand, we actually had this conversation right before, we understand that might be a little bit of a long time, but if it's a week or even a day, I think that goes a long way to show that diversity and inclusion is important in our community.
Thank you.
Up until now, we've just been able to say no to everyone because we've only had the one flag, and we won't take Canadian flag down. But as you said, we are in the process of putting up more flag poles, so we can fly our provincial and municipal flag. It would also give us an opportunity not to have to say no to requests. That being said, the decision won't certainly be made today with regards to flying the pride flag. There will have to be a whole list of protocols that we're going to have to deal with, some criteria that have to be met, and that'll all have to be worked out and presented by staff before we would be able to go forward. But, we're obviously hoping that those criteria won't be that cumbersome to try to meet. So, but I don't know if we'll, at some point, probably need another presentation or a written request or something when we get into next year. And then by then, hopefully, we'll have we'll have done our groundwork and we'll know where we stand and what criteria have to be met. So hopefully we'll be able to accommodate.
Great, thank you, Council. Just a question around the timeline. So when do you guys think approximately? I understand you have to go through protocol. That's very important to you guys. So, but when do we expect to have a decision? Is it in spring? Something maybe even broad, just so that we can keep our finger on the pulse on this.
Defer to staff. I believe we're talking about getting the flag's poles planted reasonably this year, right? Before the ground freezes.
Through Mayor Kane, yes, that's right. We're in the process of installing them actually right now.
Okay.
That'll take a few weeks as far as letting it dry, cure and everything so they can be anchored properly. And then the policy work is going to occur. Obviously, we'd look to some of the work that perhaps some of the other municipalities have. It's new for us, so we just want to make sure we have for example, if two organizations come in and want the same day or other, these sorts of things. Other than that, we'll be able to then brief council and have them make a decision on our procedures. I would expect it's going to be more into the spring.
certainly before June.
Great, that's great.
Anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to
Thank
meet
you
you.
very much.
Nice to meet you. Do we have a third presentation? Don't have presenters for this, or we're just gonna go through it on our own? Do we have presenters for this, or we're just gonna do it on? Arthur's gonna do it, okay. So we'll move ahead to 3.3, a Natural Resources Canada Initiative, re-electric vehicle charger stations, and we have a semi-expert in the field coming forward. Yes, it'll be
It'll be
electrifying
electrifying
discussion with
discussion.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Kane. I do feel a little, I won't say conflicted about this, but I hope to charge the discussion here suitably. So kidding aside, I am speaking on behalf of a submission that came forward fairly recently. Earlier this summer, the federal government announced a program where they were trying to support the installation of or the adaptation of electric charging stations across Canada. And they've committed a fair amount of money to a program that's basically going to see the investment in the communities across Canada. In July and into August, the climate change coordinator at County of Northumberland approached us and said, would we be interested in hosting some electric charge stations in our community? And as we were sort of thinking that as staff, they came back with another concept that Ontario Power Generating Corporation has come forward with. So that's sort of the background. The federal government has the program. They have certain levels or expectations that they want. For example, a minimum of 20 packaged in before a submission. And now OPG has come along and said that's a program that they actually like to be able to support. So my presentation is to, in effect, provide information around what OPG has provided through the county and made a submission on it. So I'll take a few minutes to do that and answer any questions you may have on what they've done. So do you have the one that starts Electrifying Ontario, Bringing Level 2 Charging to Our Community? And it's probably, it's the second one down, yeah. So I wasn't going to speak to the benefits of it because that basically is some of the background material. I want to move more towards the actual proposal that's being brought forward. So this is, the concept is Ontario Power Generation bringing level 2 charging to your community. And a little experience, level 1 is you plug your car into a 110 wall charger. Level 2 is 240, or in other words, it's a lot more powerful, and you can charge at a faster rate, and you'll see a chart in that at in a moment. And level 3, it charges at even higher speeds and much more rapid charging. So I'll touch upon that in just a moment. This is their concept of bringing level 2 charging to communities across Ontario. I don't think this is going to work for me. Okay. So again, using some of the material, it's about OPG and EV charging, some of the opportunities that are presenting themselves, OPG's level 2 charging station proposal, and then what they see as next steps in the timeline. So again, with some of the background of OPG, as you know, is they see themselves as a leader in clean energy investment. They do provide energy across Ontario and power that is 99% carbon-free of emissions. And this is basically relates to the series of installations or type of generating capacity they have outlined on the bottom, with 2 large nuclear facilities, the solar installations, and again, the other array of generation capacity that they have. They, as we all know, have decades of operating experience with a high degree of reliability and safety ratings. And they have significant experience also in project management and development expertise. With Darlington being refurbished, they are currently executing Canada's largest clean energy project. So as part of their goal on this statement or in this initiative, they're trying to make EV charging in Ontario as easy, seamless, and reliable no matter where you plug in. The opportunity that presents is, again, keying in on Natural Resources Canada's zero-emission vehicle infrastructure program, which is targeting having $130 million deployed over the next 5 years between 2019 and 2024 to support higher level charges across Canada. OPG is submitting this bid or this proposal forward to communities to seek host partners interested in deploying what they're calling level 2 charging infrastructure. It's all required to be submitted to NR Canada, Natural Resources Canada by September 18. So you can see the timeframes are very tight. They started this, announced it in July. The county approached us in August, and they've come forward with this proposal just in late August. So we're trying to respond to these fairly tight deadlines because they want the information submitted by September 18. The benefit of OPG's value or proposition to us is that they believe that by having this packaged proposal back to NR Canada, it's going to increase the odds of finding success by having this, again, larger package. It allows the money to be deployed by the federal government to a more sort of professional proposal as opposed to a number of smaller bids. It also avoids high upfront costs. OPG will be paying for it upfront. And given their experience, they believe they'll be providing a hassle-free initiative for us where they're taking care of the installation, the maintenance, and the operation of the charging network on our behalf. It will, as a result, provide a more seamless user experience for EV people using EV chargers across Ontario, because they'll be able to key into databases or programs that provide that information. And it obviously is going to, we'll be able to rely on their ongoing management and reporting that they will be doing back to us and to NR Canada as part of the funding program. So just to give you a bit more background information on what they're doing, this slide gives you a sense of what their focus is, and it's on the middle group. So the level 1 charging is, again, fairly slow output. It takes about 20 hours to charge a smaller battery car or a dual purpose car, and typically, again, it's based on 120 power supplies on a 12 or to 16 amp circuit, so a standard household circuit. OPG wants to provide level 2 charging, which has triple the kilowatt hours. It takes about a third of the amount of time to charge a standard or a similar car, and again, it requires, instead of 120, it requires 240, so it's a special installation. Level 3 is not specific to the supercharger type, but it's, for example, Tesla superchargers use level 3 charging, and they use their own system, and it has a considerably higher power outlet. So this is where you're able to actually charge your car in time frames more in the 40 to 50 minutes, fully charged. So the purpose of their, if I go to the next slide, OPG's level 2 is it will provide us a charging service within the township with no upfront costs. They are submitting a bid that says it will be a standard annual fee, and they have not set the fee yet, but they foresee it to be in the range between, I believe it's $1,200 to $2,000 a year. The station deployment will be taken care of by them, so this all the site planning, the procurement of the evaluation information, construction installation, as well as the ongoing support for the network operations and reporting. So obviously there's it's not simply install the piece of equipment, but there's a fair amount of ongoing work that they'll be taking care of. What they see in the green box to the side is that this information or this application would be scalable to our needs. So we can set the user pricing to be in line with market. So while we're paying a fee to OPG, we will be getting the revenue that is set for those stations. In fact, that's what the next bullet covers. All revenues are collected by OPG and transferred to the site host, in other words, us or whomever is actually hosting it. They take care of all the billing and settlement of those accounts. So again, it's low impact on us, but we receive whatever revenues are actually generated. We would pay, however, the electrical costs. So while we get the revenue, we have the costs of the hydro itself. And we have the ability to renew the charging agreements beyond the time frame set up with the proposal. So with the next slide, we could have made the bid directly to NR Canada and owned the facilities and installed them ourselves. But under this model, the one package being put forward is that OPG will take care of it, and they'll deal with it as long as we basically come up with the annual estimated annual costs of around $1,100 to $2,000 per year. They don't have a firm estimate because the actual amount will vary depending upon sites, so how far you are from existing power lines and other installation issues that are required. So the last slide I have is that the next steps. So up to next week or a week tomorrow, we are supposed to have our information to OPG to express our partnership, and they'll provide a draft letter of agreement and a letter of intent for our review. So I included that as part of the package as far as a memorandum of understanding and a confidentiality agreement, so you're aware of what they're looking for. And we're also going to provide them once if there's an agreement by council to actually proceed, we'd have to indicate the number of charges that we're interested in and provide the signed documentation back to them that we want to actually proceed with the next step in this proposal. Following any approvals, there's obviously be site assessments to finalize costs and negotiate final agreement for the charging services. So that was to try and bring you up to date on the proposal, the background to it, and the timelines, which is why we're sort of at today, hoping to come back to council if there's even general support with a direction that we'll have a report from asking for the mayor and clerk to be able to proceed with agreement to be part of this initiative, and that would be up to council to decide. Okay.
Thanks, Arthur. Turn it over to council for questions. Larry?
So you're saying it takes 6 hours under this level 2 for a car to be charged?
To be fully charged,
Fully
right.
charged. So where would they assess where these sites were going to be?
We could work with them, but I mean, we would also try and come up with our own ideas. So even within our community, we could figure out what are good locations. So just tentatively, would you put one in the Baltimore Rec Center? So if someone's at a hockey game or at a soccer game in the summer, they could have their vehicle charging while they're there. Or would we put one in Bewdley as well, so the north end of our community, and have one so that if someone's at the community center or fishing for the day or otherwise, they would be able to access that as well. Personally, I don't see it as a replacement to your home charger or whatever infrastructure you have. It's part of a network so that if you're going somewhere, you won't feel stranded if you're going and your charge is for example, going down.
So, yeah, that is my ignorance on this process, but so a person who owns one of these, what's it called, an EV, electric vehicle?
Electric vehicle, yes.
Uses charging at home overnight, let's say, so that the automobile is fully charged when they take out, and then these would be an augment to that, right?
That, I would say that's typical, or that would be the
That's
norm.
the idea?
That would be the norm, yes. And where someone may live in an apartment and they don't have their own charger or they're using other ones, this is, for example, a network already. They're relying on the network. This is building out their network. So if they don't have one at their home or if they're living in a place that they have not installed one, this just acts again to sort of build out the network of potential sites where they could be charging their vehicle. Okay?
Go ahead, Pat.
Okay, so by doing it with OPG, then that makes it that we're not stuck with that 20 charger minimum, right? Because they're putting in a larger
Correct.
amount, so we can choose the amount that we actually want. Is there a minimum number?
Through making, there's no minimum. We can ask for X number, but everyone's going to cost us somewhere between 1,100 or 1,200 and 2,000. So if we even pick the mid number, everyone's going to cost us, say, $1,500. So we know you're not going to generate a lot of money on these. I'll be quite honest. I think that's what the gentleman I had emails back and forth with, Tyler Seed. These are partially a service, partially supporting carbon reduction in Canada, but also partially economic development. So someone who's coming saying, yeah, I'll go to Rice Lake because I know there's a charger nearby and I won't feel stranded. Or if I sit there for a little longer and I have to charge my car, I've got a place I can go. So there's the economic benefit of that as well, as far as economic development potential. But there's no requirement for a minimum number, but at least providing one or two, or if we decide three, would be part of that 20 bid that OPG is making to NR Canada.
Well, did I understand correctly that their bid is a minimum of 20, right? That they can
They
go higher?
want to see a minimum of 20 in any proposal put forward to the federal government.
Okay. I completely understand the logic of we're not going to see any profit right now, but at some point in some time, we probably would. The 1,200 to 2,000 is going to end up, wherever it ends up being, will be a flat rate amount separate from the actual electricity used, or that's what it's imagining even with electrical use it will be?
So the way I've read the material so far, and the question I had to OPG was the 1,200 to 2,000, that range figures the installation and annual maintenance and repairs, and if there's anything damage to them, that's their sort of charge for covering, doing the install, the initial investment, installing it, and then that's the sort of the annual service fee, but that doesn't cover the power cost to the facility or the revenue that's generated by it per hour. So we sub out the power cost plus less the revenue, and then we're paying that sort of fixed installation cost on an annual basis for the set term of the agreement.
With the ability to not have to go with a really high number, I like this proposal because it's a way to get us started. And you're right, it is, I mean, the one place down at 401 in Port Hope, there's had them there for years now. Originally I never saw cars plugged in, and now I sometimes do. So it's catching on slowly and steadily. It's nice if we have even if just a few to say, well, in these specific locations. Thank you.
Thanks.
Did I read that they were only going to do 100 though? Didn't I read that when
From OPG?
Yes.
I'm not sure. I missed that if I did.
Did anybody?
They probably have a max that they want to invest themselves because they're
Right.
taking on the investment costs related to getting those chargers and installing them.
And my point is, if there's 444 municipalities and only doing 100, then
Yeah.
that's not a lot per municipality. Yes, Mark?
I guess my question comes down to dollars and cents. How many cars will we have to charge to break even? Do we know that?
So the estimate I had back from the program coordinator is that market rates for level 2 charging are generally $1.50 to $2 per hour. So you'd have to, and I'm quoting him, you'd have to expect some pretty heavy usage to have them to get near for paying themselves. And he said, I just want to be completely transparent on that. So if you have one and you're generating $2 an hour on the charge for the hydro, that's basically that's the market rate for level 2 chargers. Then you're generating at max $24 a day. But again, what you're trying to do is that's the revenue part of it. Okay.
How do we get a revenue then? How does that work? Like how, if a person goes up, they plug in, how does the billing go? Do they put a credit card in somewhere, or how does that?
So, speaking from my own personal experience, it's all done by credit card, and it's basically in the computer system. If I go to the one, and I use the one at Port Hope, so that's my station I stop at if I need to. You plug your car into that one, and it's all done by computer and credit card. It's automatically in the system. So unless they set up one with an actual pay system, which would be more expensive, people they may have that technology, sort of like you go to a gas station, you tap your card. They may have that technology. I haven't seen what they're actually been planning to install. So it could either be pay charge or automatically it identifies who you are. It knows who I am when I plug in, for example.
Can the station only charge one vehicle at a time?
Depends upon the installation. Normally, like the little machine you'll see when it has one outlet to it. But they want to. I know that you can install home ones that have 2 lines. So I'm sure they can have the technology. If they don't line them up, if they take one per station, they could. We could find out if they've gone to the next step, which would be 2 lines per station. But I don't know that for sure. I know that each one, if you go to Port Hope, you'll see each one has an individual station or individual charger.
You have questions as well, Scott?
You just answered my,
Oh.
sorry, you just asked my question.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Other questions then?
Hope that's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, go ahead. Mike.
Where do we go from here? Will a staff report come to next meeting?
So through Mayor Kane, we were going to have the staff proposal. We could have had it today, but I thought, let's get the presentation forward, answer any questions. We'll bring a staff report next week, and then you can decide whether to proceed with none, or one or two, or however many, and then direct the clerk and the mayor to sign the agreement to at least go to the next phase, supporting OPG's bid to NR Canada. And then once they make the decision on the allocation and where they'll be and how many, then we have a next step to follow up after that. Okay?
I'm sorry, Pat, go ahead.
Having said that, didn't the letters from
18.
OPG say they needed to know by the 16th?
18.
So we're going to decide at council on the 17th, and you're going to get it to them, and we're not worried about the 100 people? Or the 100 chargers? I mean,
Mayor
if it
Kane,
goes through, I acknowledge that.
the idea was, I'm going to be in touch with the county coordinator and OPG that we've presented this information. We will be discussing it next week to at least include us in something as a placeholder in their bid and confirm whether council actually wants to proceed and how many next week. So I expect to have it lined up to confirm or to say no next week.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, thanks again. So we'll look for a motion to adjourn, and we'll have a 8-minute break before committee adjustment. Thank you. Moved by Mark, seconded Scott. All in favor? Carried. So we're adjourned at 1:52. Thank you, everyone.
The degree of adjustment. Sandra, if I could turn the next section of the process explanation over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, this is the meeting of the Committee of Adjustment, and they will be hearing consent applications today. We don't have any minor variances on the agenda. Each application will be announced by the committee chair, and then a planning report, a synopsis of the planning report will be provided. The full report is available on the township website should you wish to review that. The floor will then be open to the public. Please make yourself known to the Secretary Treasurer, that's being myself. The order of speaking is as follows. Those persons in support of the application, those persons in opposition to the application, those persons seeking clarification, and the applicant will have opportunity to speak at the end should they wish to. Please note that all persons wishing to speak to the application must address their comments and questions to the chair, and you must speak clearly and slowly and state your name and address so that the Secretary Treasurer, myself, can ensure that the record is complete. Members of the committee may make comments or ask questions as they deem necessary for each application, and a decision will probably be made today on each application. Should you wish to receive a notice of the decision, you must request a copy of that notice in writing to the Secretary Treasurer, myself, or you may sign the file sheet in the lobby. There are 4 file sheets out there, so please make sure you're signing the file sheet for the application that you're interested in. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmation of the agenda, please? Mark, Pat, all those in favor? Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? There being none, it's recorded. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, they've been circulated. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Bill, Pat, all those in favor? Thank you. Business arising from the minutes. We have 2 applications that's been before the committee in previous months. B 07-19 being the Tom Clark application on the Harvard Road. Sandra, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wish to remind committee sorry, I'm trying to find the item in the Planning Act. beg your pardon.
Just previously heard.
This is there's a provision in the Planning Act that any member who previously heard the first public meeting may continue to sit on this secondary part of the public meeting and make decisions. If they didn't hear the public meeting, then they would not be able to participate in the decision-making process. Anyway, in this application, Mr. Tom Clark, B0719, vacant land on Harwood Road. The application was recirculated on or before August 26, 2019, and signs were posted on the property on August 26, 2019 in accordance with the Planning Act. The application is seeking to sever 3.2 acres of land with 66 feet of frontage on Harwood Road. The property is within the rural designation of the township. Mr. Clark has also received provisional consent regarding new lot creation configuration via applications B010203 on the southwest corner of his property. This application for a new lot, which would be the third and final lot creation permitted in this area, was originally heard by the committee in May, and all members of the committee were in attendance and heard the public meeting. The decision of the committee was deferred to permit the applicant opportunity to pursue the establishment of legal rights-of-ways for the abutting properties at 3089 and 3093 Harwood Road. On July 9, 2019, the committee granted provisional consent with respect to those rights-of-way, and the applicant is in the process of fulfilling those conditions imposed. As stated in the May staff report, the proposal is in keeping with the provincial policy statement and the township official plan. Minimum distance separation calculations were completed for all the properties, and the required setbacks are met and then some. The lands are zoned marginal agricultural, which require a minimum of 5 acres and just under 200 feet of road frontage. The severed lands are proposed to be 3 acres in size with 66 feet of road frontage, but that's because of it being between the other two properties. There's more than sufficient room on 3 acres to have a longer driveway and a beneficial, bountiful building envelope, beg your pardon. But the proposed lot will need to be rezoned to rural residential, and there'll be a special provision with respect to the frontage of the property. Development charges will be imposed as per the development charges bylaw. Agency comments that were received: Township Public Works, Township Building Department, Conservation Authority, and Hydro One all offered no comment or no objections in the spring. The County of Northumberland, they encourage new residential lots in settlement areas, and limited residential development in rural areas is permitted. The proposed lot is appropriately sized, and the existing shared driveway must be maintained and used to access the proposed lot. An easement should be established. This is one of the reasons why committee deferred their decision in the spring, to make sure that the existing driveway could continue to be used by the abutting property owners and also this new proposed property. Back in May, the public did have some input. Mr. Frank Ambrosi of 3093 Harwood Road spoke in opposition to the proposal of the 66-foot road frontage, and he had some issues regarding making sure that he had maintenance over the driveway that he was currently using. Tricia McDonald of 3059 Harwood stated she didn't want to share her driveway and noted marshy area, cattails, and ducks on the subject land. Member Lovshin noted that the marshy area would be reviewed by the Conservation Authority, and the Conservation had no issues with that. Member Williamson did have to leave the meeting at 4:51 that afternoon. The applicant noted that this was a wet year and ducks were in a lot of places in the township. He acknowledged the agreement between the neighbors to share the current access point from Harwood Road, and he was willing to make the application. Again, he has fulfilled that. Liability issues were noted with respect to using the driveway, but it is already in place. Member McCourt had noted concerns regarding the proposed lot frontage. And Chairman Gibb suggested that there was a legal question regarding the use of the right-of-way that was being used but was not in legal existence at the time. The questions regarding access to the property and the budding lands have been satisfied via the consent applications B12 and 13 of 2019. Access from the north-south portion of County Road 15 would not be possible to the proposed lot, as it does not abut this portion of the roadway, and it was never intended to obtain access over Ms. McDonald's lot. In conclusion, upon review of the application in relation to the provincial policy statement, the township official plan, and the zoning bylaw, and the comments received from the outside agencies, it's the opinion of this department that the application B719 would meet the intent of the planning documents for consent for lot creation. Should the committee grant the consent, it's recommended the following conditions be imposed. Subject to the submission of a reference plan, details are provided. Subject to submission of registered documents regarding the establishment of the rights-of-way. They will need to be stamped and registered on title and returned as part of this particular condition so that it's all finished. Successful completion of the zoning amendment to special rural residential zone. Payment of a park levy, $1,500. Payment of development charges, $6,185. Payment in full of all current and outstanding taxes, and stamping of the deed within 1 year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I see the applicants here. Mr. Clark, would you like to come to the microphone, state your name and address, please? And would you like to make a presentation, or would you prefer just to answer questions as needed?
My name is Tom Clark.
Excuse me, Mr. Clark, would you turn on the microphone, please?
I can do that.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Clark, address 2727 Division Street, Hamilton Township.
I'm sorry, I don't believe it's turned on.
I'll see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. My name is Tom Clark, 2727 Division Street, Hamilton Township.
Good to go.
Thank you.
And since I've been here before and everybody knows, I think, what's going on, I might as well answer questions and talk later.
Very well. We'll get you to set aside. We'll see if there's others here in support or in opposition to the application, and then we'll go to the committee for the questions. Turning to the audience, is there any other person here in support of the application? I see none. Are there any persons here in opposition to the application? Mr. Ambrosi, would you come forward, please? State your name and address.
Frank Ambrosi, 3093 Harwood Road. This provision on this 66-foot road frontage, this ridiculous lot or severance is surrounded by residents that have the proper road frontage on all their lots. You know, I don't understand why the township is making such a big difference in provision on this road frontage. This is just, I don't understand that. That's one point. The second point is, Don and I have used that driveway for over 30 years. We've raised 6 children. Now we all have grandchildren. We have pets. Don and I respect each other's driveway. We take care of it. We plow it. We snow blow it. We do everything. We grade it. We oil it. You know, we paid for gravel and stuff like this. We've taken care of this driveway. And we know there's kids and dogs out here, okay, because we've been doing it for 30-some odd years. Now all of a sudden you want to put a laneway or a driveway that could be in excess of 300 feet long to access this lot, depending on where they were to build their home. We get some idiots come down here, racing up and down that driveway. I will hold people responsible if one of my pets or one of my grandchildren or somebody gets hit by a car, because Don and I and Nancy, my wife Kathy, we all know what's going on there. You know, we've taken good care of things there. If they decide to build a lot, they're gonna have to come in there with dump truck after dump truck after dump truck after dump truck, whether or not it's been a wet summer or spring, full of fill, to fill in that wet. Because you cannot build unless you build on that high side and the rest is swamp. Now, I know this might get a little personal. I know you know that because you've hated there. And it is wet. And it doesn't matter if this has been a wet year or not. It's always wet. There's always cattails. It doesn't matter how wet the summer has been. You know, it's just a ridiculous setup. Surrounded by other people's homes that have been there for 30 years, and now you want to stick a laneway in there with basically it's a highway. Because you know, and I know, that these people are not necessarily going to be responsible people that are coming up and down that laneway. Not to mention the heavy equipment, dump trucks, whatever needs to be done. I mean, I understand, like, there's leeways and there's provisions, but my house has got the proper road frontage. Don's house has got the proper road frontage. Trish's house has got the proper road frontage, and now all of a sudden we want to make an exception for, and actually Mr. Clark's other properties that he severed down along the Harwood Road do have the proper road frontage. Now we want to put a lot right down in the middle of that field between everybody's houses with a 66-foot road frontage that the only access is between my house and Don Linton's house. This is ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. And like I say, I will hold people responsible if something happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Just, Mr. Ambrosi did indicate of my interest in the property, and that is correct. However, that interest in that property probably ceased 15 or more years ago, so I do not have a conflict in respect to this property at this time. Is there anyone in the audience in support, in opposition to the application? Thank you. Anyone seeking clarification? Please.
Good afternoon, Trish McDonald, 3059 Harwood Road. I'm looking for some clarification on the road frontage, and as the planning coordinator said, apparently 66 feet is enough, and the lot is sizable enough to warrant a very long driveway. However, what if that person were to build right at the edge of the property and not make a long driveway due to the wetness and fill and expense and things like that? So how does that work? And what exactly is the minimum frontage on a severance in the township of Hamilton?
Sandra, I will defer that to you, but I will also make an attempt to answer those questions myself. The standard lot size is 150-foot frontage on a year-round maintained road. And I need to adjust your question a little bit, I think, for staff, if I'm understanding it correctly. What I believe you're asking is, what is the closest distance the residential unit could be constructed to the rear lot lines of the Ambrosi and Linton properties?
Correct, yes.
Sandra, I'll turn that to you, please.
The rear lot line for the Ambrosi property and the Linton property would be defined as a side lot line for the Clark property. A side setback is 3 meters, 10 feet.
I'll point out that what Sandra is referencing is the definition within the document, the zoning document itself. And if I remember correctly, because it's been a few years since I used that document, but what we'll find is the 66 feet that actually touches the Harvard Road will be considered the front lot line,
Correct?
and therefore then need the front yard setback.
Correct.
The distance to the furthest to the south, which is identified in front of me as 348 feet in length, will be considered the rear lot line.
Correct.
And then by default, or by definition, the balance of the lines left are interior lot lines, and therefore have the setback of the interior side yard, which Sandra has identified as
3 meters. Correct.
We're gonna, please proceed. I think we have that question answered. Please proceed.
So you're saying that where the property abuts Linton's and Ambrosie's, there could be a home built within 3 feet of that?
Meters,
Sorry, 3 meters.
Yes.
3 meters.
yes.
Okay, and my first question, what's the minimum frontage on a severed lot in Hamilton Township?
150. And I'll just confirm with Sandra on my answers on that. Yes.
So the exception made here is why?
The proposal is for a 66-foot road frontage versus the 150 normally required. It is being brought forward because of the possibility of a longer driveway and the expanse of the lot in behind.
The possibility of a longer driveway.
Yes.
Can you guarantee that there's going to be a longer driveway?
I gotta put my head in this for just a second. Technically speaking, as we sit here today, the new property owner, the person who builds, could build within that 66-foot mark, because once you get 10 feet off, you still have a 46-foot wide building envelope, technically speaking. I would propose that perhaps maybe when the zoning bylaw comes forward, the front setback be increased as a special provision, making sure that the front setback is the full length of the driveway, if you will, and making sure that there's sufficient setbacks from the rear lots of Mr. Ambrosi and Mr. Linton. But that's a question for council.
Sandra, point of clarification there ever so slightly. Your reference to a house possibly being built in the 66-foot width strip
Yes?
would also be dictated by the rights of way that are dealt with in previous applications, which means no structures can be on those rights of way.
Correct. So it would be behind what is identified as BCD. It would be it could be anywhere south of that point.
That is if the council or the committee do not consider a special setback in this particular case.
Correct.
However, with that special setback consideration, it could be that the house is even further away, not on the narrow strip of 66, but also could even be further away from the rear lot lines of the Linton and Ambrosi property.
It could be.
And it could also include the rear lot line of the
McDonald.
McDonald, thank you, rear lot line as well, because that's also considered an interior lot line, which could mean 10 feet from the rear of your property.
Right.
This is something that can be discussed with Mr. Clark at time of zoning amendment. Yes, correct.
Do you have any further questions? Or I think we've successfully answered those. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, you have. I just want to, I heard a lot of could be's.
That's correct. It's not where it stands today.
So today, 3 meters from BCD, they can build a house.
I'll go with a yes. I'm not 100% sure you couldn't even eliminate that 3 meters on B, C, and D. Because it's not a lot line and therefore doesn't need a setback. It could be 1 inch from B, C, D. It would need to be 3 meters on either side of that narrow strip.
So what do Ambrosi's, Linton's, Lavoie's, McDonald's have in writing to say that that won't happen?
Today, nothing. The zone provision that would be considered for this property today has that 3 meter setback. You're making a point, Mr. Ambrosi has made a point, that the committee and council in the future can look at to have that an increased setback.
Okay, but no guarantees.
No guarantees today, that is correct.
Okay.
Anyone else seeking clarification? Mr. Clark, the applicant, would you like to now speak? There have been some questions directed to us as committee members and as to staff. One of them is the concern of a residential structure being 3 meters from the interior lot lines. Would you be able to provide a comment on that and any suggestions you might have?
The township has a complete set of rules and regulations, part of the building code. This is a 3-acre parcel. It's 350 feet deep by 348 feet wide, not including the so-called driveway. I think we can assume that whoever builds here is going to have some values, and to build something on a 3-acre parcel within 10 feet of the lot line is highly unlikely, especially in a rural area. I think this whole thing is a moot issue that, to me, just doesn't make any sense. I've got some other comments here.
Feel free, this is your opportunity.
Okay. Mr. Ambrosi spoke, caught me a little by surprise. We've had a couple of previous sessions here, and it's my recollection at the time we discussed the right-of-ways that he stated he had no opposition to the lot being created. And I don't know if anybody else recalls that, but if these minutes are recorded, I'd like that to be brought forward because I definitely recollect it. The 66 feet that we're talking about being the so-called driveway, at one point in the past, there was a paper plan of subdivision for this property. This 66 feet is a normal width for a road. And the fact that there are kids and grandkids and pets, there are a lot of 66-foot roads, and people deal with it. This is the real world. This could have been a subdivision. The fact that it's becoming to a driveway to one house, I think is a benefit, not a negative factor. Mr. Ambrosi used the words enjoyed this driveway a lot of time. I'd just like to say that this is my property that he's been enjoying, and he scares the living dickens out of me when he says he's going to hold people responsible, because I don't want to be responsible for his enjoyment of my property. And that's part of the reason here that we're talking about rights of way. And obviously there's going to have to be some conditions with it, because I very specifically do not want to be responsible as I mentioned before, liability is an issue. And if he wants me to be responsible, if he wants me to be liable, I think everybody would understand that it would be normal that he not use my property. Several times he repeated the word ridiculous. Ridiculous to do this, ridiculous to do that. Not in my backyard. I thought that was a long time ago. But the big thing here, the so-called 66 feet is maybe a frontage from Harwood Road, but and we've used the word many times, driveway could have been a road. The actual frontage of this property is 348 feet with a long driveway. It's a 3-acre property. It isn't a 1-acre property as per one of the lots on Harwood Road north-south. It isn't the 2-acre property, it's a 3-acre property. It's equal to both of them. And as for Mrs. McDonald, building on the edge of the property again, it's a 3-acre piece. I can't see that anybody in the country is gonna build within 10 feet of the property line. The township has good rules. Like, I think they stand for themselves. And whoever builds is, I think, gonna have some good values.
Anything further, Mr. Clark?
I guess I'm done right now. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. I'll turn this open to committee members. Pat, please.
I've had trouble with this one all along because of the 66 feet. I think Mr. Clark made a really good point. We have good rules in the township, and when we go from 150 feet to 66 feet, we're making a really big exception, and I'm not sure what the good reason why is. I mean, I've said that before. We had that 150 feet in, and we actually upped it because it used to be 120. We made it bigger, and then we say, well, in this case, we should make it smaller, and I haven't yet heard a good reason why we should actually have a 66-foot frontage.
Would you like to direct that question to staff, Pat?
I think it's up to council.
Okay. Committee.
Sorry.
Thank you. Anything further, Pat?
No.
Bill?
Thank you, Scott. I'd like to direct a couple of questions to Sandra. Would this be considered a flag lot?
To some extent, yes, it would be. A flag lot has the long driveway and then a parcel that expands out, usually one side or the other. In this case, it expands to both sides. But it would be akin or a cousin to a flag lot, yes.
Do we have other flag lots in the municipality?
Very many, yes.
Thank you.
Nothing further, Bill?
Nope.
Mark? Larry?
I have to disqualify myself because I was absent in the third. I had to disqualify myself. I'd step out for last meeting.
Thank you, Larry. It should be duly noted. No further questions? I'd entertain a motion, if you would, please. Mark?
Motion to approve the application, Mr. Denny?
It's been moved to approve. Seconder?
I want to ask for a recorded vote. I don't know when I do that.
I'm sorry?
I want to ask for a recorded vote. I don't know when I do that.
Okay. Do we have a seconder to the motion? Seconded by Bill. We have committee member McCord asking for a recorded vote if you're wondering what the hesitation here is.
Item 6.1, V0719, Member Jim. Yay or nay?
Yay.
Member Lovshin?
Yay.
Member McCourt?
Nay.
Member Williamson has stated that he cannot participate, and because he wasn't at the initial meeting, the whole meeting. And Member King.
Yay.
So that's 3-1. And the motion moves forward. Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a known with the conditions set forth in your report, Sandra.
And reasons for your decision?
Mark, that was your motion.
It's been before committee a number of times now, and this is basically a landlocked parcel. And I think it's been argued about the entrance and so forth, and how to get into this property, and who owns the property and so forth. I think end result is, I mean, because it's landlocked, because it has an entrance, because you own 66 foot, which is basically a width of a road allowance anyway. I see absolutely no problem in passing this motion and moving it forward.
Bill, you want to
Yeah,
add?
well, I seconded the motion. Of all the governing agencies, there were no complaints from anyone from Kanaraska, not from county, not from roads, not from hydro, not from anyone.
Thank you.
And the impact of public input on committee's decision?
Made it more difficult.
Would it be fair to say that the agency comments and staff comments satisfied any questions raised for the committee?
Sure.
Thank you.
Nothing further than Sandra?
Not for this one, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Can I ask the significance of a recorded vote?
Maybe that could be something after the meeting you could ask staff of. Thank you.
Listening?
Moving on to another application that's been before the committee previously, and that's B0819 Westington at 8054 Oak Ridges Drive. Sandra, when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application was recirculated on or before August 26, 2019, and the signs were posted on the property on August 26, 2019 in accordance with the regulations of the Planning Act. This application is seeking to sever 560 feet of road frontage on Oak Ridges Drive with 89 acres of area. Dimensions are approximate, of course. The retained lot will have 760 feet of road frontage on Oak Ridges Drive and 92 acres of area. The property is within the Oak Ridges Moraine. The application for new lot creation was first heard by the committee in June of 2019. All members were in attendance. The decision of the committee was deferred to permit the applicant opportunity to fulfill requirements of the Conservation Authority. As stated in June, the proposal is in keeping with the provincial policy statement and the township official plan for new lot creation, as both the severed and retained lots will be of sufficient size to accommodate various farming uses required for prime agricultural uses and lands within the Oak Ridges Moraine. Minimum distance calculations were completed, and the required setbacks have been well surpassed. The parent lands are zoned Oak Ridges Moraine countryside, environmental, and linkage, with underlying permanent agricultural provisions, which require 45 acres of land and 328 feet of road frontage. Both the severed and retained parcels will exceed these minimums. It's the intent of the applicant to ensure that the new lot lines will respect the required minimum yard setbacks of the permanent ag zone. This will be confirmed by the surveyor's real property report that is being required as a condition of consent. It's the opinion of this department the proposal is in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw, and if necessary, any zoning amendment or minor variance will be brought forward. Development charges will be imposed as the new lot is being created. Agency comments: Township Building had no objection. County of Northumberland, they are requesting a strip of land ensuring that the center line of County Road, ensuring 15 meters, 50 feet, from the center line of County Road 9 along the frontage of the severed and retained portions for road widening purposes. Hydro One Networks, Inc. Noted that there is a corridor hydro corridor running through the property. But otherwise, they had no objection. And Conservation Authority, they did supply more detailed comments in July of 2016, and they had no objection to the approval of the consent. They do note that the lands in the north are a significant woodland under the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan, and any future development would have to be appropriately set back from the edge of the woodland when development does occur. In June of 11, Member Lovshin noted that the applicant was not in attendance to hear the public meeting, and therefore he asked that the proposal be deferred in her absence. He didn't feel it was fair to continue on, and that is what the committee did. They wanted to defer making a decision. Should the committee grant the applications, recommended the following conditions be imposed, and I did neglected to add the road widening condition, so I'll have to rewrite that page. But the road widening condition as requested by the county, submission of the reference plan, submission of a surveyor's real property report ensuring that the existing structures will meet or exceed minimum setback requirements of the permanent agricultural zone, completion of a Planning Act application if necessary, payment of $1,500 park levy fee, payment of $6,185 development charges, payment in full of all current and outstanding taxes, and stamping of the deed within 1 year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sandra. I see that several members of the applicant's family is here, who will be doing the speaking today. Tracy, if you would come forward, state your name and address, please, then we'll get you step aside and we'll see if there's any others in the audience that want to speak to this.
Okay, hi, I'm Tracy Westington of 8054 Oak Ridges Drive, Gores Landing.
Thank you. Turning to the audience, is there anyone else here in support of the application? Please tell us your names and addresses.
I don't need to come up.
No, you do.
We need it, it's recorded, and we like to have it recorded.
Roger Cole, 8438 Donaldson Road, a longtime neighbor and friend with the Westingtons, and my brother and my son-in-law and I, we do rent that property, and we're in full support of the application.
Thank you.
I'm Alan Cole, 4682 Cole Road. Not quite within the 400-meter setback, but very adjacent to the property. I'm also in agreement with what they're proposing to do.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience in support of the application? There being none, I'll ask, is there anyone here in opposition to the application? Seeing none, are there anyone present seeking clarification on the application? I'll come back to the applicant. You may not need to come forward. I can't suggest otherwise at this time. Is there any questions from the committee members? Bill?
Thank you, Scott. I have a question about the road widening. Do we know how the width of the road allowance as it exists? Is it a normal 66-foot road allowance?
A county road is usually 100-foot, I believe. And the county usually have something on their comments to say, make sure that the road is sufficiently wide for their purposes. So it might be a 2-foot road widening.
Right.
It might be, well, it wouldn't be up to the 50-foot road widening because the road is already there. It's a safety measure for them.
And I understand that, and if we're only talking about a foot or two here or there, supposing the applicant's not in opposition, but if it was going to be like, 25 or 30 feet off the front of their property, that's a totally different matter, so.
I might be able to help out with this. On a previous meeting date when this application was to be discussed, I was concerned about that component as well, and I went, and although I'm not a surveyor, I did, I think, a reasonably good job of measuring, and I believe what the county is asking for is something that the county already has, because it's outside of the fence, and I believe the fence will be the property line, so I don't believe there'll be any additional land taken from the ownership of the Westington family. Again, I emphasize, I'm not a surveyor, but it is minimal, if any, that they're really seeking for.
Thanks
It
for-
looks like there was a road widening there when County Road 9 was upgraded a number of years ago, and I'm sure the county took what they wanted then. So I'm not concerned about this even being on as a condition, to be honest with
So
you.
I'm too late.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, thanks for clearing that for me, Scott. I'd just like to make one other comment if I could, and that is to compliment the Ganaraska Conservation Group from our first meeting where their input was not very good. They have certainly, and thanks also to our representative on that committee, Member Lovshin, for going to bat here and getting them out and letting them have a real look at the property so they could make a more informed decision than they did the first time. So I think that's significant, and I want to thank Mark for that.
Mr. Kane, at this point in time during today, you've actually taken three components about something I was going to verbalize. I support what Mr. Kane just said. Thank you. Any further questions from committee members?
But I mentioned that.
Motion?
The motion to approve the application as presented.
Seconder, Pat? All those in favor? Passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, I will rewrite the decision page to include the road widening if necessary.
Thank you, Sandra.
Oh,
reasons?
yes, thank you very much. Yes, reasons?
We have a number in the audience here that are in support of the application, and there was no one opposed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sandra, when you're available, we'll move on to new business and application B1419 being the Nielsen consent application at 4930 Sully Road. And I believe on behalf of Mr. Nielsen, we'll just acknowledge that he's here in the audience and not necessarily ask him to come forward to the microphone. So
Okay.
Eric Nielsen is present in the audience, and he resides at 4930 Sully Road.
Thank you. The application was circulated on or before August 26, 2019, and the signs were posted on the property on August 23, 2019, in accordance with the Planning Act. The application is seeking to sever a residential lot with house and pool, having 150 feet of road frontage on Sully Road and 1 acre of land. The retained lot with nursery and dwelling will have 964 feet of frontage on Sully Road and 24.5 acres. The property is within the Oak Ridges Moraine and agricultural designations in the Township Official Plan. Provincial policy statement of 2005, as amended in 2014, directs that development build upon the rural character of the area, and it also permits residential development in the area. Individual on-site sewage and individual on-site water services shall be provided, and they are already in existence. Therefore, this application appears to be consistent with the provincial policy statement. The property does enjoy two designations. Part of it is Oak Ridges Moraine countryside, and part of it is agricultural in the Township Official Plan. And the Township Official Plan policies regarding the Oak Ridges Moraine speak to various development policies and also direct me to the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. Section 32 sub 1 of the Conservation Plan does permit severance from each other of parts of a lot that are devoted to different uses, but only if the uses were legally established at the time of the application, among other criteria. So because this particular property is a nursery, agricultural use, and has one house on it, this second house is an individual, a different use of the property than the main use. The township official plan speaks to strip development, being a series of 4 or more developed or undeveloped residential lots within 300-meter length along a public road. The lot is already developed, so there won't be any additional impact with respect to the lot lines being created. I believe that the intent of the policy is being fulfilled with this application. I'm going to presume that if you followed along with the staff report, you realize that the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan does send you in circles. But I believe that the provisions of the plan and the township official plan are being met. General policies, the lot will have sufficient frontage and area for a rural residential zone and will need to be rezoned as a condition of consent. Strip development, minimum distance separation calculations from neighboring farms. I didn't do calculations. The house already exists, so there will not be any impact on any new resident use of the property, which isn't a new use, and there won't be any impact on surrounding farms as well. The house is already there. And we do have provisions for cash in lieu of parkland and any other requirements as needed in the decision of the committee. Again, my opinion of this application is that it meets the intent of the official plan, including the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan. With respect to the zoning bylaw, the parent lands have 2 zones, Special Permanent Agricultural 6, Oak Ridges Moraine, and Special Permanent Agricultural 6, being outside of the moraine. That Special 6 zone added the nursery greenhouse to the permitted uses. Neither the proposed severed lot nor the retained lot will meet the minimum dimensions of a permanent agricultural zone, being 45 acres and 328 feet of frontage. So a zoning amendment will be required, one, to identify the rural residential use of the new lot and the underlying zone provisions, and another zoning category recognizing the dimensions of the retained parcel and any possible setback offenses that are identified. But otherwise, the proposal does seem to be in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw. By definition, development charges are imposed with respect to growth-related net capital costs against land. I did initially recommend that development charges be imposed as well as park levy, but I think that's something that the committee is going to want to discuss before the decision's actually made. So I'll skip over that at this point. Agency comments, County of Northumberland, again reference section 32 sub 1 sub 6 of the Oak Ridge Marine Conservation Plan, severance of a lot that's devoted to a different use. And they offered no other objections. Township Works Department, they had no objection to the application, and Conservation had no objection to the approval. Should the committee grant the application, it's recommended the following conditions be imposed. Submission of a reference plan, as always. Submission of a surveyor's real property report illustrating the location of all the buildings on the severed and the retained lands with respect to the new lot lines. Subject to the successful completion of a zoning bylaw amendment application, rezoning the severed lands to rural residential and retained lands to a special permanent agricultural, both recognizing any setback deficiencies, and the special permanent ag zone recognizing lot dimensions. I did suggest park levy and development charges to be discussed. payment in full of all current and outstanding taxes, and stamping of the deed within 1 year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sandra. And it's noted again that Mr. Nielsen is in the audience. I will move to the group of people and ask, is there anyone here in support of the application? Mr. Cole, would you please step forward and identify name and address?
My name is Alan Cole. I own the two properties adjacent to the proposed lot on the east side of the Sully Road. They have no numbers.
Thank you.
Because the house is existing, and technically all we're doing is doing the legality as far as the lot, I see no impact on my farming operation, so I am in favor of it.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience in support? Anyone in the audience in opposition to the application? There being none, I ask, is there anyone seeking clarification? Mr. Nielsen, this would be your opportunity to come forward and speak to us if you wish, or you may wish to just remain there and answer questions, if the committee has any.
My name is Eric Nielsen. I'm from 4930 Sully Road. The house in question was built for our son when he worked for the nursery under the Act. When he has left the nursery now, the house has become excess liability, and we would like to sell it to expand the nursery. Thank you.
Committee members, any questions? I actually have one, Mr. Nielsen. What would be the age of the house that's being severed? Would it be 20 years or more?
Be about 21 to 22 years.
Thank you. As a result of the opportunity that I have to provide comment, I am suggesting that in this case that the township has enjoyed a tax bill being paid by this property owner on this house for quite a number of years, as suggested, maybe 20 to 21, 22 years. And as such, when I read the Development Charges Act, I don't feel that it is correct in collecting the $61.85. Now, as many of you know, I certainly like to collect fees and use them for municipal projects, but it's not correct in my mind to do so here. And I provide that as a comment to you as committee members. Pat?
I was ready to make the motion, and I'm in agreement completely about the development charges. So I move for approval.
Yes.
And I move that the section on development charges be struck from the conditions.
Thank you. It's been moved. Seconder? Larry? All those in favor? Passed. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to point out that in support of your opinion, if this was a lot, a surplus house that was being severed from lands that were farmlands that were being consolidated, we would not be charging park levies or development charges on the surplus lot. There isn't a whole lot of difference in this. I can see both sides of the argument, but there isn't a whole lot of difference between this and a surplus lot. So I do believe your point is well taken. And to your memory, Mr. Chairman, the building permit was issued November 4, 1999.
Thank you. Sandra, one question on the condition of park levy. You mentioned surplus, the severance of a surplus home with farm amalgamation there. Would we be collecting a park levy on that or not? And hence, my real question is, should we look at our motion here that we just considered and look at park levy there as well.
Oh, shoot. If it was a surplus house from farm consolidation, no, we would not be collecting park levy. So it would be committee's decision, one way or the other here.
Okay, I wish I'd asked that question earlier before we made the motion. Procedural question here, everyone. Sandra, if committee would be interested, and I don't know whether they are or not, but if the committee would be interested in looking at the park levy fee as well being altered, what's proper protocol, considering we just made a motion without it being included? Separate motions being suggested?
Yeah.
It would be a separate motion. I'm wondering if it would be cleaner to go forward as the motion was put down and come back with a request to amend the decision at a later meeting.
Could we proceed with the second motion and have it almost act simultaneously, if in fact committee's interested?
If committee is interested, I'm going to defer to the clerk on that for proper procedure. Would that be something that would happen at council?
Subject to the procedure bylaw, you have the committee of adjustment, which I don't have in front of me.
And I don't believe we speak to that particular issue.
You've made a decision on an application and there's another item that you wish to include, so I don't believe it's going to be an issue if you make a second motion pertaining to the same file, and if the two members who made the first motion also make a second motion, then I think you're fine.
Pat?
I will make a motion that the park levy fee on application file B 1519 also be struck.
Thank you. Who did we have a second?
Larry.
Larry?
Oh, I jumped one, 1419.
I presume that's an automatic seconding. Any questions to the motion? All those in favor? Thank you.
Okay, reasons and impact of public input, please.
Positive, okay, so positive comments from the community. The application completely meets all of our normal expectations. And honestly, I think we're acknowledging the standing that the business and Mr. Nielsen has had in the community. I don't know how you word that politely, but that is part of it, is this is a long-standing business and there's nothing new happening.
Thank you.
Anything needed further, Sandra?
I think I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Nielsen, you will receive a notice of decision in a few days. Please follow the directions on that notice of decision. If you have questions, please contact staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to application B 1519, being the Moore application at 3218 Hickerson Road. When you're ready, Sandra, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It should be noted that Robert Moores and Brooke McInnes Moores are the authorized agents for Stanley and Janet Moores. The application was circulated on or before August 26th, and the signs were posted on the property on August 16th, 2019, in accordance with the regulations of the Planning Act. Following legal issues at the Land Registry Office, the application is seeking to re-sever lands that were previously severed, but absorbed back into the farm. The proposed lot will have 4.2 acres and 564 feet of frontage on Clapperton Road, being the same size and dimensions as previously approved. The retained lot will have over 2,800 feet of frontage on Hickerson Road and 166 acres of area. The property is within the countryside area of the Oak Ridges Moraine designation in the Township Official Plan. The proposal, because it's reestablishing the lot, is in keeping with the provincial policy statement and the Township Official Plan. This was a technicality, a legal technicality at the Land Registry Office, and it was something that committee had previously approved. As being previously approved, the lot being reestablished has already been rezoned and therefore meets the rural residential zone provisions. Development charges were imposed in 2005 when the original lot was severed, and we didn't charge anything extra with the lot addition in 2017 because we don't do that for a lot addition. Park levies of $1,000 were collected in 2005. Agency comments, Hydro One has no comments or concerns. Conservation Authority had no objection to the reestablishment. The county had no objection to the reestablishment, and Public Works had no objection as well. Should the committee grant the application, it's recommended the following conditions be imposed. Submission of one hard copy of the reference plans identified. I already have a number of them on file, but I do need one more copy for this particular file. Payment in full of all current and outstanding taxes, and stamping of the deed within 1 year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I question, is the agent for the applicant here today?
Yes, sir, I am.
Please come forward, state your name and address, and we'll get you to step aside to see if there's anyone in the audience.
Rob Moores, 373 Scugog, Bowmanville.
Thank you, and I don't believe you're going to need to step away. Obviously, but I believe I still have to ask, is there anyone in the audience in support of the application? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience in opposition to the application? Seeing none, is there anyone seeking clarification? Coming back to you, being the applicant, Mr. Moores, would you like to provide comment, or would you like to field questions if there are any?
No, Sandra did a good job. I'm just here to field any questions anyone has. I'm at your mercy, so I'll do the best that I can, though.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions? Is that a question or a motion coming?
Well, a motion's coming quickly. I just want to confirm that, were there additional costs related to this because it had to come back? It seems like you collected everything the first time around.
There was the application fee to the township, an $800 application fee.
I don't know how many other members feel, but I'm thinking that, we've been down this road before. It's all these things have been done, have been paid for. I don't feel good about collecting any more money on this application.
I believe that's actually a separate issue that needs an incoming letter to be considered. The applicant can do that if they so wish, and it can be dealt with at that particular point in time. But what's before us is the application itself.
I'm happy with that answer, and I'm sure the applicant has heard it, so I am willing to make a motion to accept.
Can I ask a question then? If that's the case, we just approved the last application with some conditions of taking costs off the application. I don't see a lot of difference between that and this one. So I'm kind of with Bill. I mean, I'm 100% in support of not charging for this application. I mean, it's been through the ringer twice.
I believe there is a difference. Sorry, Pat. I believe there is a difference in that what we were dealing with the actual last application was conditions within the application. If you wish to state you're in support, and both you and Bill have done that, then I believe proper procedure is for the applicant to make a request to reduce or eliminate those fees. At that time, the committee members, yourselves included, will be in a position to vote on that. And I turn to staff and say, am I correct in that verbiage that I provided?
It's correct. The committee makes a decision on the application today, and if the applicant wishes to request a refund, that is a separate application at a meeting, and staff will speak to that at that point.
And there is in fact a difference between a condition within our decision that we've just dealt with and the actual application fee.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So we've got it moved, I believe.
So, yeah, I'll say.
And seconded by Mark. Any questions to the motion? All those in favor? Passed. Thank you.
Reasons?
Sandra's gonna want some reasons now.
Could we use all the same ones we used the first time that we put it through?
Agencies on site.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
And no public input.
No opposition from the circulation
Yes,
list.
thank you.
Sorry, just one question. I don't know if that's being mic'd. Am I sent the copy? Or
Yes.
it is?
You will receive a notice of decision, at which time review it very closely because there are some conditions that you need to meet. Your severance is conditional at this point in time. It's not complete. You have additional work to do. Follow and look for that notice of decision. You should receive it in 2 weeks approximately.
Less than. Yes,
Thanks very much. Take care.
thank you.
Where are we? Do we? Other business?
I have none, thank you.
Committee members, any other business? We got a motion. Do we have a seconder? Thank you. Microphone's off.